You are tuned to ARP on the Accelerated Radio Network. It's 12 noon, and it's time to have lunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Bringing money talk you can understand. And now here's your host, Miss Charline.
Good afternoon, everyone, and this is Miss Charline. Welcome to Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Today I'm in North Carolina, and I'm visiting with two wonderful people. And today we're talking about a wonderful organization called Pinky Swear. Pinky Swear is a nonprofit organization that has their focus on children who have been diagnosed with cancer, and they support the children, and their families. So today I'm here with Sue Radcliffe. How are you today, Sue?
I am good, thank you, Charlene.
It's so good to see you. And a father of one of the children, which is Preston Davis. How are you, Preston?
I'm fine, Charlene. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So today we'll be talking about your interaction with Pinky Swear, Preston, and your role at Pinky Swear as a area director. And so, Sue, how did you get involved in, first of all, what is Pinky Swear?
Okay, the Pinky Swear Foundation, we were founded back in 2003 by a little guy called Mitch, and our mission is to help pediatric cancer patients and their families, both financially and emotionally.
Okay.
So I can tell you a little bit about Mitch and his story and how we were founded.
Yes, how was the company founded? Who is Mitch and how did he found it?
So he was a little boy that lived in Minnesota back in 2002. He was in the hospital at Christmas time. He was 9 years old. He was getting a lot of gifts for Christmas. He had terminal bone cancer. He could hear a child in the next room saying, "Dad, why are we not getting gifts this Christmas?" And his dad had to explain that the bills had been coming in, the medical bills were so high, they just literally couldn't afford to have anything for their family that Christmas. And Mitch was upset by that, and he said to his dad, Steve Chapokas, he said, "Dad, will you take me to the bank? And I want to withdraw my money, and I want to give it to the other children in the hospital that aren't getting anything." So Steve wheeled Mitch down to the bank, and they withdrew $6,000, which was all the money that Mitch had. And he put it in envelopes of $100 with "Love Mitch" on the front, and he slipped those envelopes under the doors of the other rooms. He left them on the side tables of the children in the hospital. And when he was all done, he said, "Dad," he said, "that was the most fun we've had in a long time, Dad." He said, "Can we do it all again next year?" And Steve looked at him with a tear in his eye, and he said, "Mitch, I don't think you're going to be around next year, buddy." And Mitch, being Mitch, he said, "Well, Dad," he said, "will you make a pinky swear with me that you'll continue to help other children who have cancer after I've passed away?" So that's the reason that Steve Chapokas and his wife, Mitch's mum, Becky, founded what was called the Miracles of Mitch Foundation.
Yes.
And they changed their name to Pinky Swear just a couple of years ago to make it a more generic name when we decided to become much more of a national foundation.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. What a big heart from such a little boy. And he is able to live through Pinky Swear, which is wonderful that his parents had the strength to continue such a wonderful legacy that this little boy started by saying, "I don't want children to go through the holidays and not have anything because their parents are so burdened with bills because of the condition that they have." And Sue, you and I spoke a little earlier, and you said, it's through no fault of their own. These children didn't do anything to get cancer, to wind up with this disease, but they find themselves with this disease. And it's so unfortunate that they have to go through this, and we rely on people and their generous donations to help in that way. And I want to talk to you a little bit, Preston, as being a dad from a young lady who was diagnosed with cancer and how that's impacted your family. How old is your daughter? What is her name?
Her name's Allie.
Allie. And so how old is Allie right now?
She's 12. She was 11 years old when she was diagnosed. And we didn't even know that she really had cancer. For the longest time, she just had a lingering cough. And the doctors kind of said, well, it's respiratory infection, here's antibiotics. And let it take its course. And then she started to lose weight, and we chalked it up to maybe being a growth spurt.
Right.
And she just continued to lose weight. Went to the doctor, and they said, well, you're not getting enough calories for your active lifestyle and of your calorie intake. And this went on for several weeks. Went to see a hematologist. They ran tests, and they said, we found a mass, so we're going to send you to Levine's in Charlotte. And they just kind of overwhelmed us at one time. And being 11 years old, when they said the first word tumor, then Allie just lost it.
Yeah.
This was earlier this year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. She was diagnosed on April 29th of this year.
Okay.
And being a parent, it's your worst fear.
Exactly.
You wish that 100 times over that it was you and not them.
Right.
And seeing her accept the fact that she was sick, but she was going to beat it, and that became her mindset. She said, this is not who I am. This is not going to define who I am. She said, I'm going to beat it. And that automatically became her mindset. That became our mindset.
Yes.
Together, and that was kind of Allie's mentality, let's get it. And then we would always say, you're never alone. You're never alone. No matter what, you're always going to have somebody in your corner.
Yes.
And so she started to tell the doctors, and nobody fights alone. And that's how her personality is completely infectious. But as she progressed through her treatments, she started to lose her hair.
Yes.
And we knew it was a side effect.
Right. Now take us back, because I want people to walk your journey, because you told me earlier she was a very active child.
Yes.
Right? Like involved in sports, and so tell us a little bit about pre-diagnosis, what her life was like.
Pre-diagnosis, Allie was, we all led a very active lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Allie played tournament travel softball, so she was in a softball field 3 to 4 days a week.
Wow.
She was a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo, so when she wasn't at a softball field, she was at a Taekwondo school.
Uh-huh.
She would go to regional tournaments, to national tournaments. She would win medals, the whole 9 yards. She was an honor student in school. She was always hitting the books, and she studied and still does like nobody's business. But
once she was diagnosed, now she was an active child, doing all the normal things that kids do, play sports, doing well in school, and your family, a close-knit family, everyone doing their thing basically, and you're supporting your kids and what they enjoy doing. And then she has this cough. You finally get it diagnosed, and they say that she has a tumor. And then how did that impact your family, that diagnosis, from a emotional and financial perspective?
Well, my wife and I, we both had to take lots of time off from work.
Yes.
Of course, her hospital stays, neither one of us left her side.
Mm-hmm.
She would go to sleep, wake up, first person she would see is us. And her treatments, she would have to go 3 days 1 week, 1 day 1 week, 3 days 1 week, 1 day 1 week. And each treatment we both took off. She never did anything by herself. And so we had to take time off from work.
Definitely.
Were you staying at the hospital, or were you traveling back and forth?
We were originally, during the initial diagnosis, we stayed in the hospital for, I think it was 7 or 10 days. And then we came home. She started her treatments, and we would commute from Concord to Charlotte, back and forth. And then she ran into a complication with her treatment. She had a reaction, and they had to admit her. So yet another hospital stay. And then she was released, and we continue with the commute. But the days off from work, 8 hours here, 16 hours here 1 week. It may not seem like a lot, but then whenever you get your paycheck, you're like, wow.
It is a lot. It's a lot because 20 hours in 1 week, you know, that's half of what your normal pay would be, you know, for both you and your wife so that you can support your daughter. So that's a significant impact. That's up to 50% of your household income that is no longer available because you're at the hospital.
Right.
Plus you have all these additional costs as well.
Exactly.
Getting to the hospital and back.
Right.
Food you have to buy because you're not eating at home. Don't know about your son, Ali's got a little brother as well, so often families have to pay for additional childcare for their other children, so it's a compounding
issue. And then how old is your son?
He's 9 now.
He's 9 now, so that's had an impact on him and how you are able to support him and the things he does too.
Right.
So as a family, it's had a significant impact on your lifestyle.
Yeah. And I guess you've been relatively lucky that your work situations have probably been better than might be for some other families.
I've been extraordinarily blessed. The individual that I work with, he and I, we've leaned on each other tremendous amount over the past few years. And at no time did he say, I need you here. He's like, man, take all the time you need.
That's great.
I got you.
So your company has been very supportive.
Right.
That's very important.
It's fantastic, but it's not always the case.
I was going to say that.
This is the anomaly, correct.
Right. So you see a lot of cases and a lot of families. And so how does the impact of having a child diagnosed with cancer, how have you seen it impact families and how they take care of their family?
Well, for example, not all employers, not all employment situations are as user-friendly and positive as Preston's experience. For example, our all-star dad, Rob, who also lives in Concord, quite near to Preston, he has 4 children. Braden's the youngest and he has cancer. Rob's a single dad. He was working in a situation where they could no longer continue to keep him on, so he was laid off. So not only was he struggling with getting Braden to the hospital, he didn't have a regular income.
Right.
So
and 3 other children.
And 3 other children. Wow. So that's where we were able to step in with multiple rent payments to keep Rob and those kids in their house. We also provided grocery gift cards and gas gift cards. He called me one day and said, Sue, we just don't have any more money to buy food.
Wow.
And thankfully we were able to immediately, you know, one thing about Pinky Swear is that we can act very quickly in a situation like that. If a rent needs paying, if they literally have no food to put on the table, then we can, we do have a regular grant cycle, so there's an application process, but for those immediate crisis situations,
you can immediately
act,
Right.
So, you know, I would say the work situations of our families vary massively. You know, obviously anyone with a heart is going to help their employees out as much as possible. But at the end of the day, they have their organisations to run.
Exactly. And so it's not
so it becomes a business decision.
It becomes a business decision, right?
Yeah.
Wow. And so get to that point, you know, sometimes like with organizations like we were talking earlier, there are so many nonprofit organizations doing so much great work for so many different causes, but like a St. Jude's Hospital and a Pinky Swear, how do those two complement each other? Because St. Jude Hospital does so much wonderful work as far as research and, you know, working with families of children who have cancer and the actual children themselves. How does a Pinky Swear fit into that as an organization? What is the difference between the two?
Okay, well, you know, very clearly, St. Jude's and Pinky Swear, we're all helping families whose children are battling cancer.
Definitely.
St. Jude's are supporting a very specific subset of that group, who are their patients who are undertaking clinical trials. You know, I think most people know that if you are a patient at St. Jude's, you don't have to pay a medical bill. You don't have to pay your expenses. They're going to take care of you.
Yes.
we're supporting, we do support St Jude's patients as well, because despite all that, that doesn't mean to say that the parents are able to keep up with their jobs and everything.
Right.
So we're supporting, for example, they've got a Totolite down in Charlotte, Henby Children's Hospital. We're supporting some of the paediatric cancer patients and their families there.
Yes.
But we are supporting the plethora of children and families who are not St Jude's patients.
Yes.
Sadly, 1 in 300 children will be diagnosed with cancer, which is a figure that blew me away when I first started this role.
1 in 300 children.
Every 45 minutes there will be a new diagnosis. So while we've been going through this interview, at least one other child will be diagnosed. The treatment cycle, Ali's treatment cycle is pretty swift in comparison to a lot of children. The average treatment cycle can be 2 years. I was with a family on Saturday. Their little boy will be in treatment for 3.5 years for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So this is a long process.
That's a long process.
So we are, Pinky Swear are here to see them through that process, both financially, so you can apply for multiple grants, and also just being there as a source of support.
Yes.
A lot of people have said to me, that's almost, well, it's certainly as valuable.
Absolutely.
Or sometimes more valuable. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that if a family feels supported emotionally, if some of the stress is alleviated, then their child's outcomes can be better. Now, where the science is behind that, I'm not sure, but we all know the negative impact that stress can have upon people's lives.
Yes, and just like Preston was saying, with his daughter, you're not fighting alone. And so I'm sure a lot of times families feel isolated, or they feel as though, where's my help going to come from? 50% of my income is gone. I have to support my daughter. How am I going to do all of this? And to have an organization like Pinky Swear, who completely understands the trauma that the family is facing, is phenomenal, because the owners, the organizations, the head of the organizations had a child in that situation themselves. So who better to speak to the situation than someone who's actually been in it? And that's one of the reasons I love Pinky Swear, because just the organization itself and how it was founded, for me, is something that I want to attach myself to. I want to help in any way that I can possibly, to make sure that families who have this diagnosis have the support they need so that they can get through it and to the other side, so their children can go back to doing the things that they were doing before this interruption. Like Ali, she'll be back, doing her thing. What does Ali want to be when she grows up? She's gonna have to get through junior high school and high school, right?
All those great words about
right?
She's already planning.
Right?
She always has a plan for something.
Now you said she's back doing a little bit of karate. She had to stop for a while to take taekwondo, right?
Yes.
She had to stop for a little while, going through treatment. And where is she at in the treatment process?
She finished up her last radiation treatment about 2-3 weeks ago. Okay. And she'll have her next scan in about 2 weeks.
So in 2 weeks she'll know that everything is good.
We should have the follow-up the following week.
Okay.
And then if everything comes out good, then they're going to go ahead and look at getting her report out, and where she can kind of get back to life as normal as quickly as possible.
That would be great. I want to stay in contact because I want to know how Miss Ali is doing.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like you're going to be able to put it behind you at that point, Preston, or is it?
Well, I think that it's always going to be a part of you. But luckily, Ali hasn't allowed this to define who she is.
That's good.
Her biggest thing was whenever she started to lose her hair. She said, I don't want to. And I said, well, we know that it was a side effect. I said, but, you're the same Ali that you were yesterday, and you're the same Ali that you were 6 months ago. I said, but the special thing about it is that you're not the same Ali today that you are going to be tomorrow.
That's right.
And you're not the same Ali that you're going to be 6 months from now. For one reason and one reason only. You don't know how to quit. You've never uttered those words before.
That's right.
You look at adversity and you see it as a challenge, you're going to beat it.
Yes.
And her complete demeanor changed that night whenever she and I had the conversation.
Wow. Wow. And sometimes that's what it takes too, right? So, because that's kind of what you were talking about, that emotional support. You know, we're going to beat this. You're going to get back to doing what you were doing before. You're not a quitter. You know, let's just move through this process and get back to what we were doing. Get you back into tight.
And what amazes me about these kids is, you know, it's easy to dwell on the tragedy, on the negative side of the diagnosis, but so many of these kids, because of the diagnosis, have gone on to do such great things and help so many other people and their parents too. I was with a group. Pinky Swear sponsors a group called Momcology.
Momcology?
If you've not heard of them, then you should look them up.
Okay.
Because they connect moms of the cancer patients. I don't know whether Suzanne's heard of Momcology, but they had a retreat here. Pinky Swear paid for the beautiful house that they spent the weekend in. We found yoga instructors and massage therapists and nutritionists and people to bake cakes and all that kind of thing for them. In fact, I thought of Ali, she could have baked a cake for them. She likes baking cakes, does Ali. But just being there together and for them to connect with one another, that's a really powerful thing for those families. But the founder, my point was, the founder of Momcology, she has a child who has cancer herself. And when her son was diagnosed, she felt very isolated. So she took it upon herself to create this group that now supports moms all over the country, so you know, that's another great example of somebody who's let an adverse situation in their own life
have a positive impact, so they can go on and help others in that situation.
And I like to, if I come across a child who's newly diagnosed, then I like to try and pair that family up with a child that I know who's a couple of months, years down the line with their treatment. So I think, you know, that's an important thing to do.
Yes. Now, Sue, how long have you been a part of this organization?
Well, you know, as I say, Pinky Swear was in Minnesota for 10, 11 years. And then Steve and the current board decided to go bold and decided that they wanted to help kids nationally on a much more national basis. Not that we hadn't been. So we're now helping kids in, last count it was 48 states. So
48 out of 56.
I'm still hoping for the Hawaii case because I'm quite happy to go out there and support that particular family. But almost 2 years ago, Pinky Swear came to Charlotte. Kind of slightly in an indirect way, but somebody I know here was establishing a triathlon. My kids are all very active. They run, bike and swim and everything. I'd always thought that this community we live on would be a great opportunity to do a triathlon. So I got involved as one of the key volunteers. He contacted a guy called Hunter Kemper, who is a 4-time Olympic triathlete. And he is a spokesperson for Pinky Swear. At least he was at that point. And he said, well, that's all great, but Pinky Swear are into kids triathlons, and that's our kind of signature event. We are very much about children helping other children and trying to create some of the future philanthropic leaders of the future. You know, kids see beyond themselves in the same way that Mitch did and Ali is already doing. And so I thought that was all a fantastic mission, something that I wanted my family to be involved in. And my son and one of his good friends, they decided they were going to run their first half marathon. He was 13 years old, and they were going to do it to fundraise for Pinky Swear. And the moment I saw him and his friend Morgan come over the finish line, having run 13.1 miles, which is fairly impressive accomplishment for a 13-year-old. And they were doing a Pinky Swear together. And it wasn't about who was first over that finish line. It was a fact that they'd done it together. They'd done it for other kids with cancer. That was me sold on Pinky Swear. And so then we had our first kids triathlon in May of last year. We had 310 kids come out and participate in that. It's non-competitive. All the kids race with one of our Pinky Swear all-star children's names on their legs. So We call them All-Stars or Kiddos.
Yes.
And they have their own little baseball type cards with their interests and hobbies and their pictures and everything on it. And after that event, Pinky Swear decided that Charlotte was going to be a great place for them to be and have a staff member. I started talking to them about fulfilling that role, and I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing.
That's amazing, and that's a great story. Now, what's your background? Where, where were you before Pinky Swear?
So quite obviously I'm not from Birmingham, Alabama. I was born and raised in the UK.
Okay.
And I actually was an HR manager for a bank in the UK for 16 years.
Oh, okay.
My husband got a job managing an insurance business over here.
Mm-hmm.
We came to Greenville, South Carolina 11 years ago. I have 15-year-old twins and a 10-year-old daughter, Sophie. So they were all small born when we first moved over here.
Right.
And I spent a lot of time volunteering my HR expertise to my kids' schools and a few other organisations.
Yes.
I then wrote on the local magazine, interviewed Donald Trump actually, so enough said about that. I had a little food business called Wild Tree.
Oh, okay.
But I've done a variety,
of
different things.
Yes.
I
feel mom, you're a wife.
Yeah. But I really wanted to do something, and I know this can sound a bit trite to people, but something that has a deep meaning, that something was actually giving back.
Yes.
I love that Pinky Swear has a direct impact on these families.
I do too.
And there are a lot of paediatric cancer charities that are about paediatric cancer research, which is massively underfunded, and those do very important work, but I wanted to do work that really was going to
significantly impact the child and their family.
Yes, on an individual basis.
Yes.
So, for me, I mean, there's two things I really love about the job. It's been getting to know some of the families and supporting them. And that has meant the world to me. And also, I found that I actually quite like asking people for money. And I found that I'm quite good at it.
Yes, you are.
And there's nothing like getting a call from a sponsor on a Friday afternoon. I'm sitting here in my home office, and I get a call from TTI Hoover, and actually the VP is Morgan's dad, who's the one that did the half marathon with my son, to say, we'd like to sponsor Pinky Swear, $10,000 for your kids' triathlon.
Nice.
So, we are still a relatively small organisation, and to some people that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but we've got to start somewhere, and we've got to build our presence. And we have raised over $13 million. That's
amazing.
So far.
But I like that you said that, because people think that when you give to an organization that you have to have a lot of money to give, but every dollar counts. Every dollar counts. So whether you have $5 or $50 or $100 or $500 or $5,000 or $5 million, every dollar counts towards helping better the lives of the child and their family. So never think, as an audience, never think that your money doesn't count, because it does. And it goes to support in a significant and a very intimate way the families who are part of Pinky Swear.
Yeah, I was exactly going to say, a great portion of our funds come from kids doing fundraising. So, my daughter has stood outside in the bitter wind doing lemonade stands to raise $100, and she is so proud of that fact.
That's right.
And our average grant is around $600. So, again, people might say that's not huge amounts of money, but you can apply to Pinky Swear as many times as you like. And if that $600 is going to pay your next rent payment and keep you in your home, then it's
your
really
light,
important.
your gas.
So I'd encourage anybody to give what they can.
Yes.
If $10 is all that you can afford, then we are extremely grateful for that.
Yes. Now, as an organization, as Pinky Swear, the organization, what do you think one of the things that I noticed about your organization is that you say you support families in 48 of the states so far, which is huge. I mean, that's a big deal. And your organization the headquarters office is in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
And so you would be considered a satellite office.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And you work out of your home.
Yes.
And I was so impressed by that, because when I said I wanted to come and interview you, you said, would you mind coming to my home? And I said, no, I don't mind coming to your home. And you said, well, because this is my office. And I love that, because it seems that Pinky Swear finds ways of cutting down on the overhead that will be attached to an organization, and more of the money can be focused on the families and the children, because you don't have to pay lease for office space, right? You use your own home. And I just find that so commendable. Is that throughout the organization?
It is. We have a head office in Minnesota.
Right.
We are 13 in total, so we are a small organisation at this point.
Yeah.
So we do have a house in Minnesota that has about 9 or 10 people in it, and then there are just a few of us out in the field who are all working from home.
Yes.
And as we all know, there are pros and cons
Yes.
of working at home. But, you know, I think in this day and age, it's, you know, extremely easy to hook up on a conference call from your house.
Exactly.
I do have a lot of Pinky Swear boxes under my bed and in my basement.
Of course.
And things like that. But, you know, there's no way I would want Pinky Swear to be paying dollars for me to have an office.
Right.
That don't need to be spent on that, and could be much better spent on a family.
Definitely.
I'm also a part-time worker,
Mm-hmm.
which I seem to manage to do pretty effectively
Yes.
on a kind of flexible schedule. Now, when a job becomes a vocation, like working for a non-profit is,
Right.
inevitably, you know, you end up doing weekend fundraisers and things like
Of
that. But I love it so much, I wouldn't change that for the world.
anything.
And I can still be there for my children and pick them up from school and take them to their sports and all that kind of thing as well.
Right, because
So
you're a full-time mom also. And how old are your children?
I have two just turned 15.
The twins.
Yes, Adam and Charlotte.
Right. And
So-
then your baby.
And then my baby, well, she's a big girl now, she's 10 as well. So,
So yeah.
yeah, so they keep me busy.
Absolutely, and to be able to do both is just phenomenal. But that's kind of the way of the world now, is that,
Yeah.
you know, you kind of try to balance your life, but you work, and you have your family, but your work is so instrumental in helping other people, that I love how you get your children are involved also.
Yes, well, to me, we all know what teenage children can be like,
Yes.
especially in this day and age. And so to me, that's a really important part of why I do what I do, to be a role model to them.
Yes, 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 and yes. Because like you said, children can get into all types of things, teenagers, but to have them get involved in an organization that does so much good, you know, you have to be a proud mom.
I mean, my girl, she's a bit like Ali. She's 15 years old. She's a straight A student. She wants to go to a good university, and she's organising a run, a 5K run at her school, which is going to benefit Pinky Swear, and is in honour of a little boy who passed away from neuroblastoma, who was a student at Davidson Day. And she's doing that intrinsically because she wants to help, but
Right.
she's also doing it because she knows she needs to be a holistic person, and she needs to be able to provide evidence of these kind of experiences to get into that school that she wants to go to. So, you know, I would advise anybody with kids to get them involved in an organisation like Pinky Swear.
Yeah.
And Pinky Swear is so easy to get involved in. We've had kids raise over $50,000 for us.
And then, so do you have a way of, like, if someone wants to get involved in Pinky Swear, right? And it's a parent and a young adult, you know, what would they do? What would you advise them as to how to get involved with Pinky Swear?
Okay, well, there's obviously a range of ways they can get involved. I'd advise them, first of all, to go to our website.
Yes.
And there's a volunteer button, and you can write an email, and that will be directed to the relevant person. So you could volunteer at one of our kids' triathlons. You could volunteer at one of our galas. We have a gala coming up here in February in Charlotte on February 18th. We've got our kids' triathlon on June 3rd. That'll be our third kids triathlon, and so families, for parents, for kids, they can volunteer at our events.
Right.
The kids can also participate in the triathlons.
Now, what is the website?
It's www.pinkyswear.org.
www.pinkyswear.org. And they can look there and see all of the upcoming events that you have. And it'll show how they can get involved as a volunteer in any of the events and where they're being held at throughout not only North Carolina, but throughout the country. Wherever something is going on for Pinky Swear, it'll be at that website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And they can participate in our kids' triathlons. And as soon as they register to do that, they get their own fundraising pages and they can come up with all kinds of fun and exciting ways to raise funds. Because, you know, doing a triathlon for a 6-year-old, that's quite a big accomplishment.
That's a big deal.
So people are keen to help them out.
That's
and
right.
give them some dollars too.
Yeah.
And the looks on their faces. We had one little boy and he was a Pinky Swear All-Star. Davis Odercash. He's now got his own foundation. He's one of the great kids who's gone on to do bigger and better things. He handed out the medals the first year. He was going through treatment for liver cancer. This year, he participated in the kids' triathlon.
Nice.
And to see his little arms up in the air as he went over the finish line, he raised money for Pinky Swear.
Wow.
So, you know, what I would say is any kid can do it. It's non-competitive.
Right.
They have our all-star name on the leg. They select one of the all-stars they want to race for, and they feel great afterwards. We have a big opening ceremony. Steve Chapocas comes along and speaks. Our all-star families are there. So it's a great way to get involved. Other ways, clearly, if you've got your own organisation, then we would love your sponsorship, either on a kind of generic basis or to sponsor one of our events. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Charlene, but a lot of people say to me it makes fantastic business sense for them to sponsor a non-profit.
Yes, it does.
People love to see that you are, you've got an eye to helping people in the community.
That's right.
You know, you can have our link on your website.
That's
you
right.
can talk about the support that you've given. We're very big on social media. Again, like our Pinky Swear Facebook pages.
Yes.
You can see details of all our local events on there. So, you know, sponsorships, volunteering, participation, you know, some employees choose to match their employees' grants. Other organisations, I've got one called the Remy Group. They're doing a whole series of fundraisers this month. I have to give a shout out to these guys. They're called the Bearded Villains.
Okay.
And you might see them on our Facebook pages. They've all got beards. They do charitable works around the country. They've adopted Pinky Swear. They're having a huge fundraiser. And one of their guys works for the Remy Group. So they're having silent auctions, they're having bake sales, they're having yard sales, family nights, and they're going to raise, you know, I'm hoping more than $10,000 for us. So you can do fundraising within your office as well.
Yes, and like Arbonne International, our group, which is headed by Clara Baum, we are raising money for Pinky Swear. And what we're going to do is buy the Arbonne products and give them to you for the families to use, because our products are pure, safe, and beneficial. They don't have a lot of toxic chemicals in them, so they won't be harmful for the children that are going through treatment or are on the other side of that treatment and in recovery. So, you know, we want to do that to raise money.
That's absolutely amazing.
So we're doing
That's
that
fantastic.
too.
That's really great.
So it's all
and again, if you've got products that might be relevant to our families, then that's fantastic. We're going to actually add those products into our pantries. We have pantries at the hospitals to provide snacks for the families who are, you know, there 24/7 with their children, so they don't need to run out and buy things. And we're going to add your Arbonne goodies to those pantries, because who wouldn't like to have a nice shampoo or skincare product to go alongside the snacks. So thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. We feel honored to be able to do it. I have a lot of questions here people want to know. So I'm going to start with, for you, what do you find being the most rewarding part of your job? What is the most rewarding part?
The most rewarding part is knowing that my personal impact has helped a number of families across the country, not only across the country, but here in North Carolina as well.
Yes.
So we've now been able to award more than 90 grants to 70 families.
Wow.
And I feel that that largely has been in part to the funds that I've raised. And that's very rewarding to me. It makes me feel good to know that those families have received financial assistance because of me.
Yeah.
It's also very rewarding building connections with the kids, fantastic kids, and their parents. And I also, I think as I said earlier, if I get a call to tell me that another organisation wants to sponsor us, or we've put in an application and it's been successful, I find that really rewarding as well. I like making money. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Now, what do you find as being the most challenging part of your job?
Well, there are a lot of non-profits out there. I have heard that there are 5,000 plus in Charlotte alone. So when it comes to donating money, people have a lot of choices. There are a lot of very good organisations out there that help all kinds of very important causes. Mm-hmm. So the most challenging part is building that compelling case that makes an organisation or an individual or a child say, okay, I'm going to put my time, my energy, my resources in supporting Pinky Swear and kids with cancer, as opposed to this other charity that have also asked for my resources. Right. So that's challenging. The other part that's challenging is we are new in this area. Yes. Everybody has heard of St. Jude's. Right. Most people have heard of organisations like Make-A-Wish. Yeah. We are still a relatively small organisation. So just spreading the word, building awareness of the severity and the impact of a paediatric cancer diagnosis on a family. Yes. That's challenging to get to large numbers of people. Absolutely. Well, especially when you're just one person in a market. Yeah. So
what do you do to market Pinky Swear?
We're very, we do some direct mailing, we do some videos, we do radio and TV interviews like we're doing today, but mainly, again, keeping our eye on cost. We don't have lots of offices, we don't have lots of staff. We are not doing huge amount of advertising. Yes. So we mainly use social media, we use our websites. We just had Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in September. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I know you are, Preston. Yes. So we use that to tell the stories of our children. We find that the stories of our children speak more powerfully to people than anything that we can do or say. So we're very big on using social media for those families to tell their own stories. In fact, we're just about to tell Ali's story, which will definitely be one to look out for. Okay. And we have the all-star cards that I told you about before, and the kids love to have those. So those have got the pictures of the kids on, and their diagnosis, and their birthdays, and their interests, and kids love to find a kid that's interested in something like they are, or whatever it might be. So
that they can identify with, and that's the child they want to support.
Yeah. So those are the main ways that we market Pinky Swear. And again, for me locally, I'm in a lot of small business networking groups, so I receive a lot of support from them. And then I use my Pinky Swear Charlotte Facebook page extensively to market my events and things.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit we kind of touched on a little bit the foundation itself, and I get questions on an ongoing basis from people who want to start a nonprofit organization, and we talked a bit about that a little bit earlier too. So I'd like to focus this question on both of you. So what right now would you say, as far as starting a nonprofit organization, from your perspective, because I think you're in the middle of starting one for your daughter. Yes. So would you tell us a little bit about that, about the foundation you're starting?
We had to contact an attorney to file the paperwork. Mm-hmm. The paperwork had to be sent to the Secretary of State. Right. They had to review it. make sure everything was on the up and up. They put their stamp of approval on it, sent it back to the attorney. They in turn have turned it over to our accountant, who is filing paperwork to the IRS to get our 501c3, which makes us an official nonprofit. So that's where we're at right now, and we've had a website. It's the Team Alley website, but we just kind of took that and moved it one step further, and it's going to be the Team Alley Foundation, with an emphasis on research for pediatric cancer, just because there's so much little known about it.
Right, exactly. Like you said, because your daughter was formerly misdiagnosed, they thought it was a cold or the flu or something like that, and it turned out to be something more challenging. So that's a great organization to have, and so I wish you luck with building it. I know it's a process, right?
It is.
It's a process. That paperwork is like 1,000 pieces of paper, and they want you to define exactly what you're going to do as a organization. So going from the think tank of the big idea and narrowing it down to a focus can be challenging in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
And so lots of paperwork. So any of you out there who want to start a nonprofit organization, know that there's a lot of paperwork involved, right?
And it's a big undertaking,
and it's
I
a
think.
big undertaking.
And I do say to some of our families, don't feel, some want to, some feel like almost they're obliged to. And I don't think you have to feel obliged to start your own foundation, do you? If it's really not your thing. And I think the other thing is to have a very clear mission of what it is that you want to do, and then so I want to help kids with cancer, but by the way, once I start getting inundated with requests, how am I going to decide where that money goes?
That's right.
That's a really tricky bit. So that would also be my advice, to really think through the process that you're going to use.
Yes.
And my other bit would be, so you guys as well, don't let it take over your life, because you start it for your child, and it can easily then consume you. Okay, I'm going to put on a golf event or a 5K or a gala or something, and you're spending every waking moment calling sponsors and donors and everything else, and the kid ends up saying, hey Dad, when's the next time we're going to go out and play ball together? Right. So I think about that aspect of it as well.
Just don't let it take over your entire life. Try to have balance.
Yes.
And I think we struggle with that here, especially in the United States. We do struggle with that, with work-life balance, right? Yeah. We kind of work more and not so much balance. So I try to talk about that too on my show, is that you have to have a life too. So try to kind of balance it. When they say stop to smell the roses, I never knew what that meant. And then when I started working and I had a family and trying to balance, I'm like, that's what they're talking about, right? Yeah. Is try to balance your life. So, it's commendable to start a foundation and have it represent, children and the research that's needed for cancer. That is so commendable. But I love your advice about that. Don't let it take over your life. Let it be a part of what your family is working on, but don't let it take over.
My advice would be to start small, and if you're going to do an event, do one that your family would love to do. Right.
Okay, so that everyone can get involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't pick something completely out there that, why am I doing that, Mum? But I think the same advice goes for people working for non-profits and entrepreneurs. I think they're probably similar kinds of beings.
They are.
In that you become totally consumed with making your next dollar, with growing your business, and it can take over everything. And I think, I'm a European, and I think Europeans have a slightly better handle on...
You do.
And I'm not sure it's always that much more productive to be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
I don't think so. It becomes counterproductive because you're working tired. And so, I don't know. I just think it's counterproductive. I think that the time you spend with friends and family is as important as the time you spend in your office or pursuing your career or pursuing your nonprofit or whatever you have going on in your life. I think it becomes counterproductive after a while So you should try to balance that work and life, because, you don't want to spend your life trying to make money to get to a point in your life where you have to spend the money you make on your health because you've not been focused on anything other than making money.
Yeah.
So there has to be balance. And you can't wake up and your child is 18 and say, who are you again?
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you practice balance.
I try.
But
I'm aware of it.
And you're aware of it and you practice balance. I just say we have it perfect. I don't know that any of us get it perfect, right? But we at least try, right? Yeah. So yes. And where do you think there is room for improvement in this business model? Not your business model, because I think that you guys have found a way of lessening the cost involved in doing business. So where do you see other improvements that can be made in business?
In the non-profit
In a non-profit business.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to say that Pinky Swear is not always looking to be more efficient, more effective. We're operating with very few staff, so we need to make absolutely the most of the resources that we have.
Exactly.
We need to work on ways to establish a big presence as a small organisation.
Yeah.
So we, our mission would be to become the kind of household name that St Jude's or Susan G. Komen or one of those organisations would be.
Well, you're well on your way.
So, I don't come from a non-profit background, so I feel a little inexperienced to be advising other non-profits. But I would say, keep a very close eye on your costs.
Yes.
And be very nimble and adaptable to change in terms of the market out there for fundraising as well.
Yeah.
Because I think it can be quite a fragile kind of situation to operate in. I think you can't put all your eggs in one basket, if it's an expression you use over here.
Yes, that is.
So don't rely too heavily on one corporate sponsor, because who knows when that corporation is going to suffer themselves or things change, and all of a sudden your main sources of revenue are dissipated.
So build a network or a community.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you never know who is going to be your next donor.
Right. So building relationships is important. Networking is very important in getting your name out there and what your cause is.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. As well as keeping a very close eye on cost.
On cost.
Yeah.
A very close eye on cost.
I try to get everything donated as well. That's my other thing. When we have a gala, I get the venue donated, the band donated, the food donated, and everything else. Because again, that's thousands of dollars that could be going back to families. Yeah,
exactly.
So
I love
build the kind of relationships that people want to do that kind of thing for you. Is my advice.
Yeah, and I love the way Pinky Swear operates, because you do keep costs down to a minimum so that the focus can be on who it should be on, which is the families that you're providing such a wonderful service for, really. As a member of a nonprofit organization, what are some of your fears?
Well, when it comes to Pinky Swear,
yes,
we've got a big goal. We'd love to help every family in the country that has a child with cancer. The rate of paediatric cancer is going up. There are more and more children being diagnosed all the time. So I suppose my biggest fear is not being able to accomplish that goal because we haven't been able to raise the funds we need to help those families out.
Because you said 1 in 300, right?
1 in 300 children nowadays will be diagnosed with cancer, which is incredible, an incredible number. And it's not for me to speak to why that is the case.
Right.
I kind of feel that the whole toxicity of our environment and, foods and chemicals and all those kind of things must be contributing. Definitely. But, that's definitely not my area of expertise.
Yes.
But yeah, my you know, I love to help the families that we are helping, that we will help, but there are countless other families out there that are desperately in need of help.
Yes.
And are not receiving the kind of assistance that we can provide for them. And you know, when you think about individual fears, to think of a family who have a child who is sick,
Yes.
and by the way, they might lose their home, and by the way, you know, there's not enough food on the table. To me, that's absolutely heartbreaking.
Yes.
You know, this impacts the whole family. It impacts the family over several years. You know, it's not a one and done. It's not, you don't go in and have your treatment and it's all over with, and you necessarily get, for many families, you don't necessarily even get the same kid back that went into the treatment. I was talking to a lady, Jackie actually, Whiteside in Concord. She's got a 5-year-old Elijah. He had a brain tumour. He was diagnosed in July of this year. He's now got learning disabilities that he's got for the rest of his life.
Right.
So I guess, you know, on a personal level, I fear for their families. I fear for their future. I fear for, you know, what the future holds for those families.
Right. And what has become alarming to me is that the numbers have increased to such, you know, that's devastation. 1 in 300 children will be diagnosed with some form of cancer in their lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think that's a tragedy. You know, and like you said, I'm no expert. I don't know what's causing it, you know, but it has to have something to do with, you know, our, you know, the way we, you know, the foods, the environment, something is causing this for 1 in 300 children to wind up being diagnosed with cancer. And you were saying like every 45 minutes. And so in the time that it takes to do this interview, a parent will receive, you know, the worst news of their lives is that their child has been stricken with an illness that they're going to have to battle. And like you said, as a dad, when you get that news, the first thing you think is, let it happen to me instead. Why does my child have to go through this? And so for those listening, you know, if you can donate, you know, the amount of money doesn't matter. It's the love behind it and what it will be used for. And again, I can't say this enough, the way Pinky Square has used our technology in the 21st century to get the message out by using Facebook, by using, you know, the media in the way that they can. You know, they're not using a lot of money for advertisement because that's dollars away from the families. So it's a delicate balance that you guys are working out, you know, to have your area directors working out of their homes, you know, so more money can be directed towards the families, to get everything donated that's for a gala or for, you know, your triathlons and all of the sports things that you do, and to get other kids involved. All of those things are done at low to no cost so that all of the money that is raised can go to the organization for the families. I find that commendable.
Thank you.
I do. And I'm going to get out of your home in just a few more minutes. I just have a couple of more questions that I want to ask because I'm sure I want to make sure that we cover this with the respect that it needs to be, you know, covered. A lot of my interviews I do, sometimes, you know, we won't get to ask a question or we'll forget something or whatever, but I really want to cover this well because I want people to see the heart of Pinky Swear and to see the face behind Pinky Swear, the faces behind it. And so I have a few more questions, and those questions are, what do you think some of the kids, like we talked about holiday time, and originally the young boy whose parents now are the founders of Pinky Swear, he wanted kids to have things for the holidays. What are some of the things that the kids want for the holidays in your opinion? Because you've been here for a few years now. And your daughter's coming up on a holiday, right? And Christmas. What are some of the things that the children would like during the holidays, do you think? Or the families would like to receive during the holidays for support?
That people could give. Well, you can speak to this probably better than me, Preston. But, you know, I would say we have a lot of people that want to do toy drives for the kids. And I think that is great. I think even more so, a lot of our families would love to have gift cards.
Yes.
So that they could go out and buy specific things that their children have requested or that they know that they would love to have, and so that they can have a family meal together, which can become a rare occurrence.
That's very
so
true.
You know, a grocery gift card, or even a gift card to a restaurant or something like that. I think I would speak for the majority of our families to say people have a lot of heart, and they want to go out and they want to donate toys and things, but as you were saying, even with Ali, you can get overwhelmed with those kind of things.
Right.
And at the same time, just maybe be struggling to, you know, make a beautiful meal for the family,
Right.
or get that iPad or something like that. You know, a lot of especially the younger children that I've worked with, their families have said that things like iPads are an absolute lifeline while they're in the hospital.
Right.
Because they need something to do. They need something that doesn't involve them running around everywhere and things. So, you know, I would say gift cards are important.
Definitely.
And dollars donated. More so, of course, toys are great, but more so than toys.
Yeah, because that can be a bit overwhelming. Because you were saying that Allie got so many things while she was in the hospital that it became overwhelming. But, you know, people are doing it from their heart, and it's not meant with any offense to say that it can become overwhelming for the children. But things that they could use more are, like you said, the gift cards for the families, the gift cards so that the parents can purchase the individual item that's best suited for their child while they're in the hospital. Because that's, to me, my opinion, one of the most important times to focus on is giving them something to entertain themselves while they're going through the process, right? So, is there anything you'd like to share as a dad with other parents who may be going through this?
For both me and my wife, it was really important that, number one, we showed a unified front for Alan. You know, you're breaking inside, but they're looking at you, and you have to be that rock for them. And that's not to say you can't go and have your time by yourself, but you want to try and stay as strong as possible for your child, because they're under a tremendous amount of stress, as you are, the parent. But you want to try and just be as strong as you can for as long as you can, and then when you do have your moment, then just kind of do it out of their sight, so you can still remain that Superman or Superwoman for your kids.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again for coming on as a dad of Allie, who is going through this process now. I want to thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes. And so you can watch Lunch with the Finance Bunch. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Accelerated Radio. Go to the Accelerated Radio app and you can listen. We're on noon every Friday from 12 to 1. Watch us. You can follow us on Instagram, on Twitter. You know, hit us up. Tell us other shows you'd like to see. We'd love to hear from you. This is Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Ms. Charline signing out. Thank you.